Tuesday, a Broward County Circuit Judge ordered city officials to refrain from enforcing a controversial law which includes limits to where outdoor feeding sites for the homeless can be located. This temporary suspension comes after weeks of protests and challenges coming from activists, most notably 90-year-old Arnold Abbott, who challenged the ordinance after being arrested twice in November for serving food to the homeless through his group, Love Thy Neighbor. The hope is that both sides of this issue can come to a mutual understanding through mediation. Joining me to discuss the current status of this situation is Larry Barshevsky. He is a staff writer for the Sun-Sentinel covering the city of Fort Lauderdale. Larry, good to have you here. How are you?
Hi, Helen. Good to be here.
Such a fascinating story. It is not unique to Fort Lauderdale, and yet County Commissioner Barbara Sharif said that she felt that the media was really portraying a bad image of Broward County and Fort Lauderdale. It's not that they don't want to help the homeless, it's that there's a better way of doing it. What happened this week, and how do you think the issue is playing out?
The judge ordered both sides, Arnold Abbott, who brought the lawsuit, and the city to get together to mediate to try to find some reconciliation, some common ground. And whether they can do that, I think, is going to be a real question. I mean, the city's new law came because Arnold Abbott sued the city 12 years ago to be able to feed on the beach.
And excuse me, let me just stop you for a minute, because Arnold Abbott has been doing this for more than 20 years.
Yes.
At this same location?
He has been feeding on the beach for more than 20 years, and he also has a second location in the downtown at a Stranahan Park in downtown Fort Lauderdale. And so he's become the poster child for the groups that want to feed the homeless, and he's gotten the attention nationally and internationally.
Now, City of Fort Lauderdale looks like the opposing side. Some people say that what they're trying to do is that they're trying to push the homeless out. But this doesn't come just because the city of Fort Lauderdale wants it. It's actually coming because there are residents in the city or commercial property owners, business people who are saying, you know what? This is hurting our area. It's hurting our environment. People, customers or residents are afraid of their own neighborhood, right?
That's correct, because it's hurting the businesses, because people aren't feeling as comfortable. Stranahan Park, for instance, has become a magnet for the homeless, and it sits right next to the county main library. And parents complain, oh, they don't know if they want their children there. They're afraid and fearful of interacting with the homeless. The city will say, we've done so much to help the homeless. We've supported a homeless assistance center. We're working with the different charities to try to feed the homeless.
Where's the Homeless Assistance Center located?
It's right in Fort Lauderdale. There's actually 3 different assistance centers in the county. The main one is in Fort Lauderdale.
Outside of the downtown area?
Fairly close to downtown on Sunrise Boulevard and 7th Avenue.
Mm-hmm. So are they trying to push the homeless out?
They're trying to get them into services. That's what the city will say. But a good part of it is, yeah, they don't want the homeless to be seen. So a big push here is they're trying to get the feedings done indoors. And so you don't see the people congregating at Stranahan Park being fed at Stranahan Park.
But it's not just because they're congregating there. It's just that, let's face it, there are issues of hygiene and other issues that come into play with the homeless. For example, bathroom facilities. That's one of the issues. Fort Lauderdale has issued 4 ordinances or 4 new laws, or a number of laws, regarding what is required if you're going to feed the homeless outside.
They've done a number of laws in the different areas, and basically they've had an inability to deal with the homeless issue in the past, and so now they finally decided, let's craft laws that will meet a legal challenge. So with the homeless feeding ordinance, what happened was the judge said, well, the judge 12 years ago said, well, you don't provide any place for the homeless to be fed. And so this new law is more of a zoning ordinance that says where and how they can be fed.
Oh, that's interesting. So as a zoning law, it covers a very different parameter. They can say, we do provide facilities, we're just saying not at this location, and if it will be at this location, you have to meet certain standards.
That's correct.
What are the standards?
Well, it has to be like 500 feet away from a residential neighborhood. Any individual site can't be 500 feet, closer than 500 feet from another site. The two difficult ones, I think, the most difficult ones for the charitable groups to meet are, if you're outside, you're supposed to provide bathroom facilities, basically porta potties. And if you're outside, you have to have the permission of the property owner. And those are, and most of the feedings have been in public parks, and the question has arisen, well, even if the groups could meet those standards, would the city permit the feedings on public property? That issue hasn't been answered yet.
And that's because in the group of the Love Thy Neighbor group, they may not be able to afford the porta potties.
That's correct.
And you have to bring them in and out. You can't leave them there. So it's only for when you're feeding. Are you surprised that this has garnered so much national attention?
I think it caught the city by surprise.
I think so too.
But when you have a person such as Arnold Abbott on the other side, I mean, how can you not sympathize with what he's trying to do?
A 90-year-old man. I mean, clearly you wonder if there was not a better way of, one can sympathize with the efforts of the city, of what they're trying to do. It is a safety issue on multiple levels, not just for the residents, but also for the homeless. And in other counties, and in Miami-Dade County, that issue has been dealt with as well, to provide indoor facilities, to be able to provide them facilities where they can go to the bathroom properly and be able to clean and just be safer on multiple levels. And there's no question about that. But you also look at the issue of what this 90-year-old gentleman is doing, and it's just so amazingly noble. He's been doing it probably since he retired. Yeah.
And he does it in honor of his wife. I think she died about 23 years ago. They used to do it together, and he's continued on in her memory. And yeah, I mean, when they had the tent city in Fort Lauderdale for 5 years, my understanding is he was providing meals 3 times a day for the people there. He has a whole culinary school set up to teach homeless people how to cook and maybe get them a job somewhere. And that same center, that's what's doing the cooking, the meals that are preparing the meals that they're feeding 2 times a week out of the city. That is
such what a beautiful way to honor someone that you love, and that process of trying to, what I find fascinating, what he's doing is that through that he's also providing a therapy, a help, because homeless need more than food and physical shelter. Very often they need emotional help, psychological help as well.
And that's what the city's point is. And they are relying on people that are telling them that the best place to work with the homeless is indoors, where you can sit them at a table, give them a meal, have somebody to come around, talk to them, maybe form a relationship, start getting them into services. And that's what the city says is the benefit of an indoor feeding, and that's why they would prefer to see those feedings indoors. The groups that feed outdoors say, we can do the same thing outdoors, and we have been doing the same thing outdoors. There's one group called the Peanut Butter and Jelly Project. They came to the recent commission meeting and said they had helped get 43 people off the street in the number of years that they've been providing meals out in the outside to the homeless.
What about the issue of hacking? There was a hack that was done to city or county files this week.
No, it was the city site.
The city site by a group anonymous. Is that official? Was that how it actually occurred?
Well, when you have an anonymous group, you assume they said they were going to do it, and it happened.
Hacked. Okay.
And it wasn't hacked. What happened was they flooded the site. It's called the denial of service, and they flooded the site, which kept other people from getting into the site. The city then shut down the site itself so that it could start taking precautions so that it wouldn't be hacked, so that there wouldn't be anything done to its files. And that happened Monday, but there's been, since then, the city's had to shut down intermittently its websites to do further fixes And I think the other day they did mention that it seemed like there was another attempt to try to shut down the site.
Is there
from
any
the outside.
reason to believe that confidentiality has been compromised because of that?
The city says no. The city says its site has not been breached. That's they haven't breached it.
I find that in itself takes this to another level at how aggressive there are some people on this issue. And it's not a healthy form of aggression, because that's clearly, I don't know if it's illegal, but it certainly seems to cross a line, because those who really needed, it hurts the innocent as well, who really needed access to those accounts, and to those files.
That's a question the city wasn't sure of. They were investigating, and they had called in state and federal authorities saying to check out to see if any laws were broken.
Larry, what is the next step? What should we be looking for on this story?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the mediation. The city is not going in. The judge set this 30-day window. The city won't be going into mediation, they say, until after the 17th, because their attorneys need time to sit down with the commissioners to decide what is our strategy going to be. And what I don't know, why I'm not sure what's going to happen with the mediation, is because the city's ordinance was geared specifically to meet court challenges brought about because of Arnold Abbott's last suit that he won 12 years ago. So if you set up an ordinance that you think is going to meet court challenges and you're challenged in court, do you just fold, or do you...
But I think you're also challenged in the realm of public perception. And I think the national media, especially when you look at Fort Lauderdale and South Florida being tourist meccas, this is not a great time to look like you are anti-poor, anti-homeless, especially when the Christmas holiday season. It just seems to be the antithesis. My sense is that what the judge is saying is, it's not necessarily that either side is wrong, but there's a better way of doing this.
And just in closing here, what Arnold Abbott, the city has offered him a different site on the beach, but Arnold Abbott has raised a different issue. He's also said, you know what, the homeless deserve to be able to have a meal on the beach, just like somebody going to a picnic on the beach. And so he said, you know, it's the atmosphere of the beach. Yes, you have your tourists and that. The homeless shouldn't be kept from having that same experience. So he said, well, you know, you might have a different spot for me on the beach, but if you're going to have a different spot for me, maybe one of the hotels that has a view of the beach, so while they're eating, they can see the beach, they can see the ocean. So that's where the two sides
Wonder what the hotel owners and guests would think of that. It's a fascinating story. Thanks so much for joining us today to discuss this, Larry Barshevsky.
Thank you.
Covering the city of Fort Lauderdale. Larry, good to have you here. How are you?
Hi, Helen. Good to be here.
Such a fascinating story. It is not unique to Fort Lauderdale, and yet County Commissioner Barbara Sharif said that she felt that the media was really portraying a bad image of Broward County and Fort Lauderdale. It's not that they don't want to help the host. Tuesday, a Broward County Circuit Judge ordered city officials to refrain from enforcing a controversial law which includes limits to where outdoor feeding sites for the homeless can be located. This temporary suspension comes after weeks of protests and challenges coming from activists, most notably 90-year-old Arnold Abbott.
That I think is going to be a real question. I mean, the city's new law came because Arnold Abbott sued the city 12 years ago to be able to feed on the beach.
And excuse me, let me just stop you for a minute, because Arnold Abbott has been doing this for more than 20 years.
Yes.
At this same location?
He has been feeding on the beach for
homeless. Is that there's a better way of doing it. What happened this week, and how do you think the issue is playing out?
The judge ordered both sides, Arnold Abbott, who brought the lawsuit, and the city to get together to mediate, to try to find some reconciliation, some common ground. And whether they can do that.
Who challenged the ordinance after being arrested twice in November for serving food to the homeless through his group, Love Thy Neighbor. The hope is that both sides of this issue can come to a mutual understanding through mediation. Joining me to discuss the current status of this situation is Larry Barshevsky. He is a staff writer for the Sun-Sentinel,